A young med student walks into a busy bar to celebrate the start of spring break. He's caught on camera heading inside, but he's never seen walking out. The cameras guarding the only exits show nothing. His friends and family have no idea what happened to him. He was there 1 second and gone the next. This isn't a riddle, it's the real story of Brian Schaffer, and it's just one of 5 chillingly recent disappearances from around the globe that seem to defy all explanation. We live in a world that feels completely mapped and monitored. Our digital footprints follow us like shadows, and it seems impossible for someone to just cease to exist. And yet, every year, thousands of people do exactly that. They walk out of their homes, their jobs, their lives, and are never seen again. They leave behind questions that hang in the air like ghosts, haunting the families who are left to search for answers. The stories we're about to explore aren't just mysteries. They are black holes of information, cases where the trail goes cold in the most baffling ways. These are the stories of 5 people who stepped out of their ordinary lives and into the great unknown, leaving a void that no investigation, no technology, and no amount of time has been able to fill. Our first case takes us to the quiet, flat farmlands of southwestern Minnesota, to a night that began with celebration and ended in one of the most baffling disappearances you'll ever hear about. On the evening of May 13, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was doing what a lot of college kids do after a tough semester. He was celebrating with friends. He'd just finished his final exams at Minnesota West Community and Technical College and hit a couple of parties. Brandon was known as a responsible and dependable guy who lived with his parents in Marshall, Minnesota, only a 30-mile drive away. As the night wound down, Brandon left a friend's house in Canby to make that familiar drive home. He'd had a few drinks, but his friends didn't think he was drunk. It was a drive he'd done 100 times, but this time, something went wrong. Just before 2 a.m., his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, were jolted awake by a phone call from their son. He told them he'd driven his green Chevy Lumina into a ditch and was stuck. He promised he wasn't hurt, but he needed a ride. Annette and Brian jumped in their truck and headed out, keeping Brandon on the phone to guide them. And this is where things start to get strange. Brandon, who knew the area his whole life, was completely turned around in the dark. He told his parents he thought he was near the town of Lind, a small community close to Marshall. For the next 45 minutes, a frustrating game of cat and mouse played out over the phone. Brandon would flash his lights, but his parents saw nothing. They flashed their lights back, but he couldn't see them. It slowly dawned on them that wherever Brandon was, it wasn't where he thought he was. Versus frustrated and getting cold, Brandon finally told his parents he was leaving the car and would walk towards what he thought were the lights of Lind. He told his dad he could hear water nearby and was following gravel roads and fences. His father, Brian, stayed on the line with him, trying to figure out where he was while they kept searching the maze of country roads. They agreed to meet at a local nightclub parking lot in Lind, a landmark they both knew. Brandon didn't sound panicked. He just sounded like a kid trying to get his bearings in the pitch-black countryside. The call lasted 47 minutes. Brian was listening to his son describe the dark fields around him when suddenly Brandon yelled, "Oh shit!" and the line went dead. Brian tried calling back again and again, but Brandon never picked up. The call had ended, and so had all contact with Brandon Swanson. He had, for all intents and purposes, vanished while on the phone with his own father. The initial police response was slow. Since Brandon was 19, authorities first suggested he might have just taken off, but his parents knew something was terribly wrong. It wasn't until the next morning that a real search began. Using cell phone data, police found Brandon's car near the town of Taunton, a full 25 miles from where he thought he was. The car was in a ditch on a gravel road, just like he'd said. This discovery confirmed his parents' worst fears. Brandon had been hopelessly lost. Search dogs were brought in and picked up Brandon's scent from the car. They followed a trail for about 300 yards along a gravel road, through fields, and then to the bank of the Yellow Medicine River, where the scent just stopped. This led to the most accepted theory, that Brandon, disoriented in the dark, slipped on the muddy bank and fell into the river. The river was high and running fast that spring. Massive searches of the river were conducted, but no sign of Brandon was ever found. That chilling final phrase, "Oh shit," has been the source of endless speculation. Did he see something that startled him? Did he run into another person on that empty road? Or was it simply the sound he made as he lost his footing and plunged into the icy water? With no witnesses and no other clues, all we're left with is the haunting record of a 47-minute phone call that documented a young man's final confused moments. In response to the delays, his parents successfully fought for Brandon's law, which now requires Minnesota police to promptly investigate any report of a missing adult, ensuring no other family loses precious hours trying to convince authorities their loved one is in danger. Our next story takes us to a sunny resort in Bulgaria and to an airport where security cameras captured one of the most disturbing and viral disappearances of the internet age. In July 2014, 28-year-old Lars Mittank from Germany was on vacation with friends in Golden Sands, a popular resort on the Black Sea. It was a pretty standard trip for a group of young guys, beaches, bars, and soccer. Lars was a fan of the Werder Bremen football club, and an argument over a match at a bar apparently led to a fight. After the argument, Lars went off on his own for the night. He showed up the next morning and told his friends he'd been beaten up by 4 men. He had a ruptured eardrum and an injured jaw. A doctor told him it was unsafe to fly home with his friends because of the injury, so they flew back to Germany, leaving Lars to recover for a few days. And it's here, alone in a foreign country, that Lars's behavior took a sharp and terrifying turn. He checked into a cheap hotel near Varna Airport called Hotel Color. From there he started making frantic, whispered phone calls to his mother, Sandra. He told her he didn't feel safe and that shadowy figures were trying to kill him. He begged her to cancel his credit cards. He described hiding from people he believed were following him. Hotel security footage seems to back up his paranoia, showing Lars pacing the hallways, looking over his shoulder and ducking in and out of the elevator. At one point, he fled the hotel in the middle of the night, only to return hours later with no explanation. On July 8, 2014, the day he was supposed to fly home, Lars took a cab to Varna Airport. He texted his mum, seemingly calm, saying he'd made it. Before checking in, he decided to see the airport doctor to get clearance to fly. The doctor, Kosta Kostov, later described Lars as nervous and erratic. He told the doctor he was scared and didn't trust the antibiotics he'd been given. While Lars was in the exam room, a man in a construction worker's uniform walked in. But for Lars, this was the breaking point. According to the doctor, Lars began to tremble. He muttered something like, "I don't want to die here, I have to get out of here." And then he just bolted. Airport security cameras captured the rest in chilling detail. The footage, viewed millions of times on YouTube, shows Lars Mittank sprinting out of the doctor's office. He runs full speed through the airport terminal, leaving everything behind: his wallet, his passport, his cell phone, all of his luggage. He runs out the main entrance, across the parking lot, and straight for the airport's perimeter fence. There, the 6-foot-tall man scales an 8-foot-tall barbed wire fence with ease. He lands on the other side, in a huge field of sunflowers next to a dense forest, and vanishes from view. He has never been seen or heard from again. The search was massive. Teams with dogs and drones scoured the forest and the surrounding area. They found nothing. No body, no clothes, no trail. It was as if the forest just swallowed him. What could have caused such an extreme reaction? One theory is that a head injury from the fight, possibly combined with the antibiotics, triggered a sudden psychotic break. Another possibility is that his fears were real, that the fight at the bar was about something more serious, maybe involving organized crime, and he really was being hunted. Were the men he feared real, or just phantoms of a fractured mind? His mother maintains a Find Lars Mittank Facebook page, still searching for her son. The video of his final moments turned him into what some have called the most famous missing person on YouTube, a digital ghost forever running from a threat that only he could see. The human element is what makes these stories so haunting. If you feel it's important to keep their names alive, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Spreading awareness is one of the few things we can do for the missing and their families. You never know, the one person with the missing piece of the puzzle might be watching. Now, let's continue. Our next case is a tangled mess of contradictions, a story where the official ruling is so fiercely contested by the family that it's become a profound mystery. This is the story of Tiffany Valiante, an 18-year-old from Mays Landing, New Jersey, who had her whole life ahead of her. In the summer of 2015, Tiffany was a star volleyball player who had just graduated and was excited about starting college in the fall. On the night of July 12, 2015, Tiffany was at home. After a dispute with her parents, she walked out of the house. Just hours later, her life came to a violent and tragic end. Around 11 p.m., a New Jersey transit train was moving through a remote, dark stretch of woods nearly 4 miles from her home. The engineer saw a figure on the tracks and slammed on the emergency brakes, but it was too late. Tiffany Valiante was struck and killed. Investigators from the New Jersey Transit Police arrived, and their investigation was swift. They quickly concluded that Tiffany, who was barefoot and only wearing a sports bra and shorts, had walked 4 miles through dark, thorny woods to take her own life. The case was officially ruled a suicide. For her family, this conclusion wasn't closure. It was the beginning of a new nightmare. The Valiante family has never accepted this. They believe Tiffany was abducted and murdered, and that her body was placed on the tracks to look like a suicide. Their fight for answers has uncovered a number of bizarre inconsistencies that, in their eyes, cast serious doubt on the official story. First, there's Tiffany's state of mind. Her family insists she wasn't suicidal. While she'd had a disagreement with her parents that night, they say it was a typical teenage argument. Then there's the physical evidence, or lack of it. Tiffany was found barefoot. The 4-mile path from her home is through thick, thorny woods, and yet her feet were reportedly clean, with none of the cuts or scrapes you'd expect from a journey like that. Her cell phone, which she always carried, was found discarded near her driveway, suggesting to her family that her journey ended there, not miles away. Most disturbingly, other items that didn't belong to Tiffany were found near the tracks, including a set of keys and a sweatshirt. An axe with red markings was also found nearby. The family claims investigators dismissed these items, and that key evidence, like Tiffany's shorts and the axe, was lost or disposed of before it could be properly tested for DNA. The family's own forensic experts came to a shocking conclusion. Based on her injuries, they believe it's unlikely she was even standing when she was hit. They theorize she may have already been dead, or at least unconscious, placed there by a killer. So what really happened to Tiffany Valiante? Did a vibrant young woman, distraught over an argument, walk 4 miles through treacherous terrain to end her life? Or did she walk out of her home and into the hands of a killer? For Tiffany's family, she didn't just die that night. She vanished into a flawed investigation that they believe has hidden the truth ever since. Some mysteries become legends, spawning countless podcasts and forums dedicated to piecing together an impossible puzzle. No modern case fits this description better than the disappearance of Maura Murray. On February 9, 2004, Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student at UMass Amherst, did a series of strange things. She packed a bag, withdrew $280 from an ATM, and emailed her professors saying she was taking a week off due to a death in the family, which wasn't true. Then she got into her black Saturn sedan and started driving north towards the White Mountains of New Hampshire, without telling a soul where she was going. That evening, around 7:30 p.m., on a sharp, dark corner of Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, Maura crashed her car into a snowbank. A local school bus driver, Butch Atwood, saw the accident and pulled over. He asked Maura if she was okay and if she needed him to call the police. She was reportedly uninjured but cold and shivering. She begged him not to call the police, claiming she'd already called for roadside assistance, another lie, since there was no cell service in the area. Feeling uneasy, Atwood drove to his home nearby and called the police anyway. He made the call at 7:43 p.m. A state police officer arrived at 7:56 p.m., just 13 minutes later. But Maura Murray was gone. Her car was locked. Inside, police found her packed bags, textbooks, and birth control. Her wallet and cell phone were missing. There were no footprints in the deep snow around the car, suggesting she stayed on the road. The officer searched the area, but there was no sign of her. In the days that followed, search teams combed the vast snowy wilderness of the White Mountain National Forest. They found nothing, no body, no clothing, not a single trace. It was as if Maura Murray had simply stepped out of her car and evaporated into the cold New Hampshire night. The mystery is only deepened by the events leading up to it. Just days before, Maura had been in another car accident. She'd also recently been charged with credit card fraud. Was she running away from her problems, hoping to start a new life? Or did something much more sinister happen? Did a vulnerable young woman, alone on a dark road, accept a ride from the wrong person in that tiny window of time between when the bus driver left and the police arrived? It's entirely possible an opportunistic predator just happened to drive by. Her family has never stopped searching, convinced that someone out there knows what happened on that dark road. Maura Murray's face has become synonymous with the inexplicable, a haunting reminder that even on a traveled road, a person can still vanish without a trace. We end where we began, with a case that feels like a glitch in reality itself. This is the story of Brian Schaffer. On the night of March 31st, 2006, Brian, a 27-year-old medical student at Ohio State University, went out with friends to celebrate the start of spring break. He was smart, had a girlfriend he planned to propose to, and a bright future ahead of him. The night was a typical one, bar hopping before ending up at a popular spot called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Here is where the facts become impossible. Security cameras captured Brian on an escalator riding up to the bar's second-floor entrance around 1:15 a.m. At approximately 1:55 a.m., another camera outside the entrance showed him briefly chatting with two young women before turning and walking back towards the bar's entrance, just out of the camera's view. That was the last time anyone ever saw him. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., his friends waited outside, but he never came out. They figured he had just walked home on his own, but when he missed a flight to Miami for a planned vacation with his girlfriend a couple of days later, he was reported missing. The police investigation immediately hit a brick wall. They reviewed the security footage from every known exit. They saw Brian go in, but they never saw him come out. The only public entrance and exit was covered by that main camera. So what are the theories? Foul play is one? Did something happen inside the bar? Perhaps. His friend who was with him that night, Clint Florence, later refused to take a polygraph test, raising suspicion, though no evidence has ever linked him to the disappearance. Another idea is that Brian slipped out through a service exit. But that exit led to a messy construction site that police felt would be extremely difficult to navigate, especially after a few drinks. Could he have chosen to disappear? It seems unlikely. He was deeply in love with his girlfriend and excited about their trip. He had also just lost his mother to cancer a few weeks earlier and was very close with his father and brother. The case is a perfect, unsolvable puzzle. The central question remains: how does a person walk into a building with monitored exits and simply not come out? Brian Schaffer walked up an escalator and into a mystery that is as deep and as dark as any we have ever seen. 5 people, 5 lives full of plans, hopes and connections, all abruptly cut short not by a known end, but by an endless question mark. Brandon Swanson's last words still echo from a dark Minnesota field. Lars Mittank is forever sprinting towards a Bulgarian forest. Tiffany Valiante's memory is caught between an official story and her family's desperate fight for another truth. Maura Murray remains a ghost on a New Hampshire highway, and Brian Schaffer is a phantom who walked into a bar and out of existence. These stories linger because they challenge our sense of safety and logic. They remind us that beneath the surface of our interconnected lives, there are still dark spots on the map, moments where reality can tear and people can slip through the cracks. They leave behind a void filled only with speculation and the ongoing pain of those left to wonder. What do you do with a mystery that refuses to die? You tell the story. You keep their names alive. And you never ever stop asking questions. Thank you for exploring these profound mysteries with me. If you want to dive into more cases that challenge what we think we know, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. If you have any thoughts on these cases, please share them respectfully in the comments below. A fresh perspective can sometimes make all the difference. Watch more of our videos here, and as always, stay curious.